We need more content on what a tanky is because this is the first time hearing about it. Okay, so tanky is a derogatory term used to refer to someone who basically is an authoritarian communist. They simp for authoritarian regimes like the USSR, like North Korea, like China, often kind of giving revisionist takes, downplaying human rights violations in order to justify making love to their political theory. Okay, Ruth and I have discussed this topic at length, so she's gonna weigh in.
In brain rot terms, if we're pretending that the political compass isn't just astrology for Reddit, then tankies would be the far red color.
Okay, this is very upsetting.
We look like the colonials from Altamars right now.
Okay, so this is the political compass, which is just something from Reddit, right? But it's still a useful tool here. You're saying that tankies are in the red square. So you can see that tankies are basically theory bros who reflect a love of authoritarian, anti-democratic regimes. I've got a hot take here, but it's probably not the one you're expecting.
White people
Let's look
decided
at Madeline's videos.
Let's talk about Angela Davis's. White people
See if
decided
anything
that it was.
stands out to
Let's
you.
talk about Angela Davis's history with the Black Panther Party. Okay, this will be my last misinformation addressing. Okay, here's another one. Another misinfo thing. I fell into a pit of Democrats this week, and they were trying. Okay, I know I must have really pissed off the Democrats. A few days ago, I went viral for posting. So one of my strongest political beliefs. Okay, so this is actually something I think is really. Okay, so TikTok suspended my. Those of you who follow me might remember. So when I make videos, my main.
Okay, fellow white leftists, I have some advice for you, Madeline, for me. It's interesting to me how the topics that I cover on my TikTok often converge, and this is a prime example of that. I know that TikTok as a platform expects rapidity of response. It is a rapid fire platform where an immediate reply video, an immediate reaction, while a topic is hot and trending, will garner you more views and more profit, more attention, increased follower numbers. So Madeline made a video that got some very just criticism. And instead of sitting with that criticism, processing it, the platform encouraged them to make an immediate response. And then the app functioned as it was intended, an explosion of content, comments, responses, response videos, prompting Madeline to continue to churn out videos. And I know I have been guilty of this in the past too. But white leftists, heck, any white people, we as a demographic have very little distress tolerance. We have very little ability to sit with discomfort, to sit with criticism. We have a propensity to get defensive. We cannot handle people thinking ill of us or disagreeing with our opinions. And this platform capitalizes off of that reality. We get escalated, our distress is really high. We don't know how to sit with that distress. And so when we should take time for thoughtful reflection, we just double down. It increasingly escalated as we receive more criticism and feel compelled to defend ourselves immediately. Watching Madeline over the last few days just reinforces for me how much distress tolerance we as white people need. How poorly equipped we are to take criticism, to sit with it, to process it, to respond in a way that builds community instead of shoring up the self. And I felt a lot of empathy for them because I have been guilty of this many times. We have not had to build those skills that people of color and other marginalized groups have had to build, thanks to white supremacy, our white privilege. And I think if we want to engage as leftists and do so with authenticity that promotes community care, that upholds the values we claim to have, we have got to build distress tolerance skills. We have got to learn to feel our discomfort without feeling compelled to be defensive. We've got to be okay with being wrong, with having bad takes, with having simply unnuanced takes. We have to be receptive to the idea that our perspective may not encompass the entirety, every angle, every truth in a concept or conversation. I feel like this drama spiraled real hard. It's happened with a lot of other white creators. The urge to be defensive, to protect the self, our own ego, our need to prioritize our opinions, our inability to handle critique, especially from people of color. Ooh, my eyelashes are back. It didn't need to be this way. Building distress tolerance skills will help us as white people not only handle the reality that we are not the end-all and be-all and we do not know everything there is to know, but it will also help us learn how to be in community with other people in an authentic way. It certainly will help us be better allies and be more effective change makers. Hey Madeline, you said that I seriously need to get a life, that I'm bizarre, disingenuous, and ignorant. This is really disappointing to see from you. As I said in my comment to you, my daughters followed you for years, recommended your content to me. I thought we shared similar values. Your behavior over the last few weeks has been seriously disappointing to witness. Your defensiveness, your need to lash out in attacks when faced with valid, honest critique. Calling me bizarre just smacks of like mean girl shit. I've never been disingenuous, and I get why you need to use ad hominems. rather than examine the fact that folks don't like some of the things that you've said, that folks find flaws in your arguments, and find the weaponization of your fan base dangerous and irresponsible. It's really unfortunate to see this kind of behavior out of someone who claims to be interested in building a better world. I would have hoped you could do better than this. Okay, Mateline Pendleton, here we go. A white non-male leftist has some thoughts on another white non-male leftist and all of the discourse that's been going on the last few days. I am not surprised by the current shit show that is happening right now. I am encouraged by some of the thoughtful conversations that have come out in the wake of it. I don't follow Mateline, but I got clued into them way before I did TikTok. That's because I have 2 adult daughters who came to me years ago and were like, Mom, there's this person on TikTok. And at the time I was like, I don't do TikTok. And they were like, no, you would really love their content, right? Like one anti-capitalist to another, you would love to hear what they have to say. But very quickly we all realized that Mateline was more than someone with a fashion degree, running a business, using anti-capitalist values. They were also a tanky. And for me, that's like a big fucking red flag. Finding out that they were spewing the same kind of talking points that the very young white male tankies were spewing on my social media, my Facebook and my YouTube. Basically saying North Korea was this utopia. The only reason we think otherwise is because of American propaganda. And along with that, denying the Uyghur genocide. Huge red flags. And I saw another creator on here, I'm going to tag them, Grace, say that a white tanky is always a red flag because they will put theory above the lives of real people, right? In their mind, they're perfectly willing to sacrifice other people to their bloody revolution. And at the end of their video, Sarah said something that 100% sums up my perspective on tankies and why for me, I will always be hesitant to align myself with them or to give too much credence to their viewpoint. They said something to the effect of like, tankies feel that they are enlightened while everybody else is not. And therefore they have the right to tell people of color, especially Black people, how to secure their own liberation. It's a level of hubris, of arrogance that comes from a place of white privilege, that comes from an insulated place where theory is all you ever have to work with because you don't really have to experience the concepts you're talking about in real life ever. It's the kind of zealotry that can only come from a place of insulation and privilege. It's a kind of puritanical, self-righteous political viewpoint that few people of color in America have ever had the luxury of upholding, embracing, espousing. And while I appreciate a lot of Mateline's anti-capitalist sentiment, having a fashion degree and running a business does not make you an expert on Black liberation. And I think they and any other white leftist and every tanky would do well to sit and listen to what Black folks are saying about the election and about politics in America.
If you needed any more evidence that Mateline Pendleton harbors white supremacy...
Okay, I have a lot of thoughts on Mateline Pendleton, and I will save those for another video. But I want to talk here specifically about white leftists, specifically about tankies. As someone who was a long time ago a libertarian, saw the error of my ways. I think libertarianism is a phase that a lot of people go through when they're deconstructing. And I've been a leftist for a long time. And throughout all of those phases, I have been a staunch anti-capitalist. I have noticed a lot of similarities between libertarians and tankies, especially when it comes to white supremacy. I'm not saying that Mateline is intentionally pandering to white supremacists. I mean, the anti-Black comments of the last few days do not help, but I think it's almost impossible to be a tanky and not promote white supremacy and not automatically appeal to white supremacists. And I think for any of us white folks, white leftists who feel some kind of draw toward tankyism, the fact that those viewpoints garner support from white supremacists should be a big flashing red light and cause us to pause and reevaluate. I'm far from a tanky, but being anti-tanky is the most meaningless political position you could take. Huge red flag. Being opposed to authoritarian regimes is a red flag. Declining to participate in a circle jerk for Stalin, the Khmer Rouge, China's human rights violations, that's a huge red flag. Wait, didn't I just make a video where I said that white male leftists have to earn a spot in my FYP and in my following? Time to go block. Yeah, slapping labels on people, you're no better. This is on a video where I describe the term tanky, which is a pejorative, and I will use it freely where it applies. Because, like, if you have a shit take and support authoritarian regimes that commit human rights violations, if you put your political theory above the well-being of marginalized people, if you use your communism to justify anti-Blackness, I have no problem calling a fig a fig. But once again, white people, including white leftists, are more upset at having their racism called out, their anti-Blackness called out, than they are at other white leftists perpetuating anti-Blackness and enacting racism on marginalized groups. You really think somebody calling out racism and critiquing anti-Blackness from other white people is no better than someone perpetuating anti-Blackness with their massive platform? Thank you for so clearly proving my point about fellow white leftists. Speaking of tankies, and I explain what they are in the video where this comment was left, maggots also think like this. They are okay with dictators as long as it is on their side. They are so much alike, but can't even see it. Yep, I'll agree with that, and then people will start decrying like, oh, horseshoe theory is so unnuanced and has so many problems. But like if you're on the authoritarian left, you have a lot in common with the authoritarian right, namely authoritarianism. The descent from tanky into fascist is, a short, gentle slide.
Rather have a Republican like Harris who gives them all the shit that they want, but isn't quite, she's kind of like Trump in blackface.
Okay, this came through on my FYP and I noticed that you follow me. So I'm going to ask you to clarify, what do you mean that Kamala Harris is Donald Trump in blackface? What do you mean by that? Aside from the fact that it is a very poor political analysis to say that Kamala's politics are basically Republican politics and they're someone the Republicans would find palatable, you clearly have not looked at her platform, nor her voting record as a senator if you are equating her politics to those of Republicans. Like, I strongly disagree with a number of her policies, but she's not a fucking Republican. But I would just love it if you could please explain to me what you mean when you say that an experienced, intelligent, educated Black woman is just Donald Trump in blackface. This is on one of my videos where I talked about how men on the left need to deconstruct from the patriarchy because they currently have brought all of their misogyny with them. And they're not, by and large, safe allies for women. I saw some leftist bro who said that we need an Andrew Tate of the left. The dude is a rapist and a human trafficker. What do you mean we need an Andrew Tate of the left? This is what I'm saying. Men have not unpacked and deconstructed from the patriarchy. They are not safe for women. If they want to be effective in creating change, they've got to become more self-aware and realize that their shit does in fact stink. This person said, it's amazing the things men will admit to thinking when surrounded by other men. It's exactly shit like this. I am still scared of them. Yeah, this was in reference to my video where I showed a clip of Hassan Piker basically saying it would be a good thing if conservative women got date raped. Like, dudes on the left, what's your goal here? What are your ethics? What are your values? And are you willing to do the work, the heavy lifting of deconstructing from the patriarchy in order to achieve those goals? I am not one to be puritanical in my thinking. Well, actually, I have worked really hard to deconstruct from puritanical black and white thinking. I have seen how much that hurts me and those around me. And so I've worked really hard to no longer think and view life through that lens. I talk a lot on my YouTube about good, better, best. How when we are constrained by an unethical society, we can't always make ethical choices. We didn't create the system in which we are forced to operate. But that doesn't mean that we should give up striving to do the best that we can. Not being nihilistic. No, like ecclesiastical, everything is meaningless. We chase after the wind, so I might as well tip over into hedonism and screw how my choices hurt other people or the planet. But I do want to say I find it odd how many folks in the run-up to this election were hyper-focused on one issue, drew a hard line in the sand, strangely unnuanced, illogical, faulty line in the sand, about how a vote for Kamala is a vote for G-side. And yet those same folks are still on Twitter. So now G-side is not a deal breaker. The last few days, I've seen an increase in comments from white accelerationists, tankies, chronically online theory bro leftists, both on my TikTok, but also on my YouTube and on my Facebook. And it's always some iteration of like, the Democratic Party shouldn't have put up a G-sider Kamala as their candidate, and you shouldn't have voted for her. So stop complaining about the decrepit Cheeto reality that we're all living now. First off, I block those folks immediately because, as I said a while ago, I'm not giving them my attention anymore. But second of all, what do they think those comments are accomplishing? I mean, I guess the same folks who thought that their vote for Jill Stein was going to accomplish something think that they are doing something with comments like that. We actively voted for harm reduction. I mean, I think tankies want folks to suffer. Many have stated that they wanted the Cheeto to win. But if they are unhappy with this outcome, they can take it up with all of the folks who voted for the future we are about to suffer under.